name is Kate, and with me today is Chris, and we have two very special owl species for you guys to meet today.
Yes, we want to thank you again for joining us for our Facebook Live, sponsored by Jiffy Lube of Greater Sacramento. We thank them so much for this opportunity. But yes, today we're going to talk about owls and have a hoot and good time about it.
All right.
So we have two owls here. We have, of course, Charlie here is a great horned owl, and he is typically what people think of as owls. The look, the sound, everything. Charlie is kind of a little bit of a diva. He's not paying attention right now. He's actually showing off that ability to turn his head.
Exactly.
Look at him. He won't even look at the camera. So he's being a little camera shy this morning. But this is an owl that's found all across California, North America, and parts of Central South America too. Now what's cool is this type of owl is found in all types of habitats. So they can be found in forests, mountains, deserts, grasslands. Basically wherever there's trees and habitat for them, you can find great horned owls, even in the city. Here in Land Park, Charlie actually has some wild friends in the trees that will talk to him at night. And Charlie is a nocturnal or nighttime bird, like most people think of owls. And so he does come out at nighttime. During the day, he's going to sleep in those trees. You can see the great camouflage on him. And then he's going to come out. He may make those hooting sounds. And Mike, you do a great demonstration of the hooting. And Charlie's still not paying attention.
Oftentimes Charlie will even call and respond because that sound is close enough to his call, and so he will kind of make that noise again back. So he does make the hoot occasionally.
He does. He'll even greet some of us, especially Mike. He really likes Mike a lot, so he'll greet Mike a lot in the morning. There was one time he thought, I guess I was Mike, and he started hooting, and when he realized it was me, he stopped in mid-hoot. So he does really has personality. And so like I said, typical owl, and if you ever hear that hooting sound, that hoot sound, it's the only owl in California that makes that true hooting sound. All our other owl species in California make a different type of maybe screeching sound, a cry sound, other than an actual hoot. Now Charlie we're discussing is nocturnal, nighttime, but the burrowing owl over here is very different on when it is active.
That's right. And so this much smaller owl is called a burrowing owl. This is Sapphire here. She was actually born here at the Sacramento Zoo. I'll move so maybe she'll keep an eye on everybody, right? Now, this burrowing owl is a little bit different than the great horned owl in more ways than one, right? So we were talking about how Charlie is nocturnal. This owl is actually very open to coming out in the daytime. Now that means they have to look out for different kinds of predators. You'll notice she's always kind of moving that head, looking around, versus Charlie's much more kind of calm demeanor. She has to be on the lookout for a lot of predators, so that eyesight's really helping her. But you'll also notice she has a lot of adaptations for the daytime. So instead of some of those maybe darker, subdued, more bark-like colors, her camouflage is just kind of different colors, a lot lighter browns, maybe some spots of white. And that's actually to blend in with the ground. So not only would she be coming out in the daytime, but staying on the ground, or potentially in the ground in burrows, hence the name burrowing owl. So some of those adaptations are for her coming out in the day, going out on land, and so we'll look at her feet. You'll actually notice there are a lot less feathers than maybe Charlie, and that kind of gives her a little bit more fluidity when she's kind of running around on the ground, so that way maybe there aren't feathers catching all kinds of dirt and debris, so it gives them a lot smoother of a run rather than maybe that flight and advantageous that Charlie has with his feathered feet.
Now you can see there's a big difference in size. Charlie is very big. That's actually how the great horned owl got their name. They are great in size, and they're actually one of the largest owls found here in North America. Now he doesn't have them up right now, but you can kind of see on his head some feathers there. He can actually stick those up, and they may look like little horns on his head. But they're actually just feathers, and they're to make him look big and more impressive to maybe another owl or another predator that might be around. And so that's how they got the name Great Horned Owl. He's looking at this tree behind him, trying to figure it out, it seems. So this is one of the first times Charlie has been in our new classroom area here. So I don't know if he's seen this tree before, but he's trying to check it all out. And so with Charlie, probably one of the first thing that most people notice with owls is those huge yellow eyes. Now owls have excellent eyesight, and their eyes take up actually the majority of their face kind of space there in their skull. So if you were to compare the owl's eyes to proportion to their face to our face, our eyes would be about the size of oranges, possibly even grapefruits, to kind of give you an idea of how much space their eyes take up on their skull. Now there's some advantages and disadvantages of having big eyes. An advantage, of course, is excellent eyesight. Being a nocturnal creature, it is very difficult to see at nighttime. And so all he needs is the littlest bit of moonlight to be able to see around him, see the trees, see the little details and stuff, and then he can easily catch his food and see his food running around. So eyesight is very important to the owl. Now some disadvantages are he cannot move his eyes side to side, up or down in his eye sockets. So that's why he needs to be able to do what he's showing you right now, is being able to turn his head. He can turn his head about 270 degrees. Now full circle is 360. So it's not all the way around, but it is close to it. And they have that ability because they have twice as many vertebrae or neck bones than we do. They have 14 vertebrae where we only have 7, and that allows for that extra flexibility. So it ends up not being a disadvantage at all of not being able to move those eyes in his socket. So you can see fairly well.
I know he's doing a good job actually showing you that range of motion, turning his head almost kind of to where that 270 mark would be, and then he has to start over again. So
yeah.
How they turn their head, very important for them. It's the same with the burrowing owl. You can see she's looking at me just right, almost like straight behind her. And then if she wanted to keep looking just like that, she has to start over. So she has to kind of begin again. So just like the gray horned owl, those 14 neck bones, plus they have a little bit kind of special musculature and blood system, so that way they aren't cutting off things like circulation and they aren't stretching those muscles. Like when you do it, you can kind of feel your muscles get tight. And that's a little different for these owls because they need that kind of stretch to turn their head. All very important. Now, for the burrowing owl here, she's going to have to see in the daytime, so it's going to be a little bit of a kind of different level of vision than maybe the great horned owl, but she's using that kind of sharp vision to go for probably smaller prey than Charlie. So instead of going for something larger, she's going to go for things like insects, maybe small rodents, small snakes, something low to the ground, but she's fast enough that she can catch bugs and other quick moving animals for her prey. And the way that she'll catch those is by using her feet. So again, we're going to look at her feet, but this time instead of looking at how she doesn't really have a ton of feathers, we're going to actually look at her nails. So those claws are called talons. That's pretty typical of a bird of prey. They have those really sharp claws, those talons, and that is actually how they are catching their food. So they use that eyesight, they use their hearing as well to lock onto their prey, and then they grab it with their feet, and then their beak is kind of more almost like utensils for them. It helps them rip it up into fairly large pieces and then swallow it. So that is where that bird of prey raptor designation is. Owls are raptors because they are hunting with those feet. All very, very important. So she'll be going for much smaller prey than Charlie over there will be going for much bigger stuff.
He does. He has much bigger feet, obviously, because he's a bigger owl, and much bigger talons, and they're very sharp, although we just trimmed them yesterday. But his strength and his feet can do anywhere from 200 to 500 pounds of pressure per square inch, which is equivalent up to a bald eagle, which is a much larger bird of prey. So don't want to mess with a great horned owl. So these guys, when we do work with them, we do wear a thick leather glove that helps protect our hand. We can still feel some of the pressure through it, but it helps those talons from sinking into our skin, and it gives them a little bit better gripping surface. So this guy, he's going to go for bigger animals than that burrowing owl. He's going to go for things like maybe a squirrel, a rat. He's going to go for a rabbit, maybe a fox, a skunk, and you know what? He does not care if that skunk sprays him because he can't really smell. Generally, most birds cannot smell, so he can get sprayed by that skunk and he's not going to care. His girlfriend's not going to care that he stinks because she won't be able to smell him either. So they're one of the bigger predators of skunks. And then they'll even eat other birds. So they're known to eat like barn owls a lot too. So they're not real picky. So they're pretty adaptable to different prey out there. And so pretty cool. And what's kind of neat is, Kate, I want you to mention kind of the cool technique that they have to attract those bugs.
It was a good connection to the lack of smelling to me.
Yes.
So where she talked about how Charlie can get those skunks because they don't really have that sense of smell. The burrowing owls do something a little bit more, I don't know, lazy, proactive to get their food, depending on how you look at it. So what they'll do is they'll take something really, really smelly, and they will actually line the home of their burrow, right? It's a great welcoming mat.
Like what, Kate?
Oh, it's usually like poop or something dead. I mean, really smelly. And what it's doing is it's actually attracting the bugs to their front door. So it's like the original grub hub, right? Bringing the grubs to your door.
Or
for the
grubs
brewing.
to the grub hub.
That's true.
Sure.
Grubs to the grub hub. I guess you have the grub hub. So for them, that lack of smell means they don't care that their home might be smelly as well. They don't mind because they're getting that food immediately to their home, so that way they don't have to go out. Very important. Usually when these animals might be nesting or when there might be predators around, it's a lot easier if you can get them to your home.
Now, when these guys do eat, you probably realize that birds, they don't have teeth. They have a beak. And birds of prey, they have the beak. It's kind of hard to see with Charlie with his feathers on there, but it is curved, it's pointed, and that beak is made kind of like a pair of scissors for ripping their food into bite-sized pieces. So he's going to hold the prey in his talons there, in his feet, and he's going to rip off pieces with that beak, and then he's just going to swallow down the chunks. And then you've probably also heard of owl pellets. Well, that is true. There is owl pellets. What they do is their stomach is not able to digest the feathers, the bones, any scales, and stuff on the animals. So, in their gizzard, in their stomach and their gizzard, it will separate the good stuff, the meat, which will pass on into the intestines, where the gizzard will hold that stuff kind of compacted together into this little ball, and then they'll just kind of spit up the owl pellet, which has all the bones and stuff that he can't digest. And then that's what's really cool, is to go find that owl pellet. Maybe not find, but maybe better today is go on the internet, and you can get the owl pellets and you can take it apart to see what they ate. So it's really cool. And we have an owl pellet that we'll show you in a little bit of how cool. It's like a kind of a box of Cracker Jacks.
It is, and it's actually really important for scientists because inside those owl pellets are kind of the evidence of what those owls ate. So maybe it's insect exoskeletons or tiny rodent bones for this one, and maybe it's much bigger bones and fur for the great horned owl. So scientists can actually use to find out what other animals are in an area based on owl pellets. So really important, not just for finding out more information about the owls themselves, but the ecosystem as well.
Jaden, 7 years old, had a question. How old do owls get?
Oh, excellent question. Well, Charlie is currently about 6 years of age. He's definitely full grown.
And Sapphire here is 7. She actually just turned 7, and she is also full grown. So even though she is tiny, and a lot of people think she's a baby owl, she is not. She is just a different species that don't quite get as big. But these owls can live for quite some time. In fact, some can live into their 20s.
Yeah, I think some of the great horns have actually lived into their 30s, maybe close to 40 years of age. So
Exactly.
definitely the bigger owl lives a little bit longer than the little
Yes.
owl. So they can live a fairly long time.
It is, but vary between the species as well.
And Fran has a question. What do we feed these owls at the zoo?
Excellent question. So here, actually Sapphire gets kind of a fun little mix. Occasionally she'll get crickets and mealworms that are alive, so she has to hunt and forage for them, so very important for her. But she also gets mice. So we get frozen mice that these guys are able to get after they have thawed, and so that way we can weigh out in proportion exactly the amount they need for that day.
Now, we were talking about the owl's eyes, and Sarah asked, since they don't blink, how do they not get stuff in their eyes that irritate them?
They do blink, but they just don't blink as often as we do. So if you were to watch, he actually just blinked right there. Charlie, can you look over forward? And they do blink, so if you watch him long enough, you will see him eventually blink his eyes.
And then there will also be, just like us, when we blink, that helps kind of protect things. There's kind of these fine little feathers around it that can help kind of get out any kind of debris that might potentially get in there. It's just like us, where we might blink to work something out of our eyes.
Yeah, and then keep the eye moist.
Yep,
of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some other cool things about owls is their feathers are different than other birds. Their edge of the feather is actually frayed, or it's kind of a jagged edge. It's not a straight edge like most birds have. So when these guys fly, they have silent flight. So they can be very sneaky, sneaking up on that prey. They won't hear them coming. It also, especially if you're a night hunter like Charlie, where it can be more difficult to see things, by having the silent flight, it doesn't interfere with the sound that's coming from that animal when it's running on the ground. So he can also hear really well to hear where that animal is to be able to catch it.
Now, something cool about owls' ears, since we're talking about how they hear and how that helps them so much with finding their food, is owls' ears are not symmetrical. It's not on the same place on either side of their head. Instead, they're asymmetrical or kind of in different positions. So usually one opening, and they don't have fun cartilage ear flaps like we do, right? It's not trendy for owls. No, I'm just kidding. They don't need that because of the shape of their face. So if you'll notice, the way her face is shaped, there's kind of almost discs. They look like speaker or stereo discs, right? And that actually helps pull the sound in to these little holes behind their feathers. So you can't quite see them now, but there are holes. And one side is slightly up and forward, and the other side is slightly lowered and back. And that can help them triangulate where that food, that potential prey, is moving around and gives them really excellent hearing to hunt for their food.
Well, Addie at age 4 actually had a really good question. Can they swim?
Oh. Now, some owls I've seen hunt kind of fish, and so they might kind of get into the water, but I don't think they prefer swimming by any means. But they do kind of touch down into that surface maybe to grab that prey, but not in the way that we would think of do they like to swim. Now, they will take baths as well, so sometimes they'll kind of
The shallow part of the
shallow part, right? They'll kind of get that moisture on them. That can help them when they're preening or kind of correcting their feathers and that type of stuff as well.
You know, Rosie, age 9, now maybe we can talk about it again. Can they turn their heads all the way around?
Yeah, because that is a misconception. People think that owls can turn their head all the way around. But so all the way around is 360 degrees. An owl can turn their head 270 degrees. So it's about 3/4 the way around. And they're able to do that because they have more vertebrae or neck bones than we do. They have 14, we have 7 to allow for that flexibility. And they actually need to be able to have that flexibility in their neck because they cannot move their eyes from side to side to be able to see to the side of them or behind them like our vision is. So there he is kind of demonstrating that. But one thing I wanted to mention about baths, because we're talking about the baths, is Charlie, he may take a bath in kind of some shallow water and stuff, and then the little burrowing owls, they take a bath sometimes in water, but they also love to take dust baths.
They do. They kind of spread out their wings, fan out, they kind of move into the dust, and that actually is kind of more like a bath for them. And since they're on the ground, maybe in more of those kind of drier areas, that's more readily available for them than maybe a big or a larger pool of water. Versus Charlie, since he covers such a big range here in the United States, that water might be more readily available. But Sapphire here as a burrowing owl is local. So this is a Sacramento native species that would be found in more of those kind of open fields, often in areas that are close to development. And so this species is of local concern because they're ground dwelling, and we are concerned about those numbers because of human development and creating more areas. We always have to be careful with these little owls as well inhabiting some of those areas.
Yeah, that actually ties in with Ian, age 7, who'd like to know where these owls live in the wild. So,
perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Glad we could answer your question, Ian. And now I think we're going to go right over to the owl pellet right over here.
Yeah, so we're talking about owl pellets earlier. So this is what kind of like an owl pellet looks like. It just is a mass of kind of fur and bones and any feathers if they ate a bird and stuff. And then so what people do is they will go out and collect them and then they sterilize them. So you probably don't want to go out and go collect, in the wild them because, it is owl regurgitation, the good word. And so you probably don't want to touch it with your bare hands for the wild one. But this is one that was ordered online, so it's sanitized. And then you can take tweezers or start it with your hand, and then you can kind of open it up, and then you can see there's little tiny bones inside. And tweezers work very well with this because it is pretty delicate inside of this with all the tiny bones. And then you can see right here, maybe those are...
And in case you're curious, this is thoroughly dry too. It's not...
They actually change color when they dry. So the barn owl pellets, just kind of like this, start out black when they're a lot more fresh, and then they turn into that gray when they dry out.
Now it looks like we maybe have, so here is a jawbone right there. So it's kind of really fun. If you're really kind of into science and you like to find things and kind of check things out, you can see there looks like part of a leg bone there. What's really cool is when you find the skull. You get a whole skull in one of these. You don't necessarily find the entire animal in one of these. So even if he maybe ate a squirrel, you're not going to get a pellet full of all the bones in that squirrel because there might be a couple different pellets. The pellets may come up at different times, but it is very cool to check out. And then we have our little sheet. that you can get that also you can try putting the animal back together. So all kinds of fun things in these. But it's something fun. You can order owl pellets online and then be a fun activity to do with your parents. Oop, we have a skull, I think.
And it is insightful, you know, it kind of opens the eyes into what do these owls actually eat. Maybe an owl might have a specific preference. So sometimes scientists have noticed that it eats only voles or only birds. And so just like people, where we have preferences on what we like to eat, sometimes so do owls. And so when they do scientific studies looking for what animals might be in the area, oftentimes they have to look at a lot of different pellets to make a really good kind of general idea of what these animals might like to eat. And that looks like a rodent skull.
It does. You can look at the teeth here, and you can look, they're kind of flat, they're orange in color, which definitely is a sign it's a rodent. And so it's kind of neat. So there's the top part of the skull there, and then like with tweezers, you can take the rest of it out. Whoops, got a little excited. You can see, oh look, there's some like vertebrae right there too. Pretty cool. And so it's pretty neat, kind of fun activity you can do, siblings together and stuff. You guys will have different things maybe in your owl pellet. But pretty cool kind of stuff there. Charlie got a little excited.
Mm-hmm.
So we have something that we want to demonstrate with a burrowing owl. Since they live in burrows, we've been working with this one behavior with our burrowing owls of showing that generally when there's danger, owls will fly to get away from that danger. But if you look at her legs, they're very long, so they tend to run. And of course, their burrow, their home, is gonna be their safety spot. So they'll maybe take a short little flight and then run the rest of the way into that burrow. And there's her little burrow that she hides in.
All safe and snug from any potential predators, always on the lookout as such a small owl.
Definitely.
Now, we did get a couple of questions. How high do these owls, or how high can owls fly?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, of course, owls are only going to fly as high as they need to fly. Some owls are going to be maybe migratory, so they're going to fly a little bit higher maybe when they're migrating. But when they're out hunting, they're not going to want to be real high in the sky because they won't be able to hear and see the little things running on the ground. So it's maybe somewhere within the trees, maybe the top of the treetop, so not very high, maybe just a couple hundred feet, a few hundred feet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the burrowing owls, they're going to stay pretty close to the ground because a lot of their stuff is on the ground that they eat.
Exactly. They're going to want to stay nice and low.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take one more question.
Okay.
Casey just asked, are the feathers soft?
Oh,
They are very much so, and that is actually part of that kind of sound dampening, really. With that kind of fringe, it makes it actually really soft as opposed to kind of like a smooth line and crisp like some other birds. And so that softness is actually what helps them fly silently.
Okay. Well, we are about out of time now. We hope you enjoyed meeting a couple of our owls that we have here at the zoo. We also have a white-faced owl that's over kind of by our giraffe area. So next time you come to the zoo, look for those guys because they're pretty cool too. And so we want to thank you for joining us. We hope you liked hearing about our owls and seeing some of the cool things about them. We do want to thank Jiffy Lube of Greater Sacramento again for allowing us to be able to bring this to you. And any other things, Kate?
No, we'd like to thank you guys for joining us and glad you could enjoy the owls with us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.